Good morning, good afternoon, good day. And let me just start out by saying happy Veterans Day to any veterans who are joining us on today's webinar. Welcome to today's Marketing Profs Adventurous webinar. I'm George B. Thomas, speaker, trainer, catalyst, and friend of Marketing Profs team. But more importantly, I'll be your flight attendant, AKA your moderator for today's high-flying webinar event. Let me first just say thank you for being here. We really do appreciate each and every one of you for taking time out to attend and be with us and to learn with us and get this great education that you're going to get. Now, before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items to go over. If you happen to lose audio or visuals, simply exit Zoom and come back to reset your connection. Also, the chat feature is available to you at the bottom of your screen and should only be used for general comments because you can ask your amazing questions along the way using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen as you think of them. As soon as you think of them, hit them in the Q&A because we're going to be having some Q&A for you. First, we've got to hear from the presenters, and then we'll go into the Q&A session where we'll try to answer as many questions as humanly possible in the time allotted. Now, I'd like to take a minute to thank Acquia for sponsoring today's broadcast. Acquia empowers the world's most ambitious brands to create digital customer experiences. With open source Drupal at its core, the Acquia Digital Experience Platform, or DXP, enables marketers, developers, and IT ops teams to rapidly compose and deploy digital products and services to engage customers, enhance conversions, and help businesses stand out, which we all know we need to stand out in today's internet age. Attendees, are you ready to get into the good stuff? Well, of course you are. So I'm excited to introduce Brett Bothy and Chris Rothstein. Brett is a principal product marketing manager at Acquia's Marketing Cloud, focusing on Campaign Studio and Campaign Factory. She is passionate about developing digital transformation strategies at the nexus of content and data. Woo, those are two important things. Chris is the manager of strategic alliances at Gorilla Group, supporting the growth of and go-to-market planning for key alliance members to Wunderman Thompson. He combines strategy and intelligence to help clients grow existing channels, unlock revenue opportunities, and increase relevance for their customers. All right, attendees, you're here for Transforming Customer Data into Insights, the Marketer's Guide to CDPs. So without further ado, let's give you what you came for. Brett, Chris, are you guys ready to take it away?
Yes. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much, George.
Let's roll.
Excellent. Again, thank you, George, for the introduction. And we are very happy to be here today to discuss CDPs and insights with all of you. Thank you again for taking time out of your schedules to join us. We hope that there are some great takeaways for everyone by the end of our presentation. Before we kick things off, we have a little poll for the audience to answer to help tailor the conversation as we progress. We will discuss these results later on in the presentation as well, but please see that on your screen, answer it. And with that, let's begin the discussion. The idea of data problems was not created by the advent of the CDP. They've really always existed. It's just amplified now through all the channels of engagement and platforms that are out there today. As you can see, this cartoon on the screen, it was actually created in July of 2014. Again, these data collection and activation issues have been around for longer than the term CDP has existed. Brett, can you dive a bit more into these disjointed systems that have created these siloed messes?
Yeah, let's start with the problem and sort of how we got here. So I think, one thing to think about is all these different systems that we use and leverage in today's classic MarTech infrastructure. So just even thinking from the left, we do have our point of sale and inventory systems that feed into the BI system. We have our e-commerce systems, our CRM. All of these things are ultimately connected in some capacity, and some part of the picture is aligned. But really it's collected and siloed. So if we think about the BI systems feeding into direct mail, the poor marketer on the direct mail team has to go to IT in order to gain learnings from their customer data set in order to action them. And even thinking about the poor people in the call center who don't have access to any customer data, aren't aware of a customer calling in about what subscription they have in order to properly service that customer. So it's not only a bad customer experience, but it's a bad employee experience as well. So I think when you're thinking about that sort of ecosystem, technology ecosystem, it then translates into what this looks like for marketers. Basically each of our business units within marketing are siloed. So we have, basic segmentation and targeting, all the way to disconnected trigger-based and retargeting in terms of ads and email. We have limited clienteling, and loyalty platforms are isolated. So the problem really is that this data lives within each system and is only actionable within each system. So we're not gaining a full view of the customer. And it's a challenge really for marketers, because it becomes a cannibalistic type of environment where, someone like perhaps on the eMerch team might be sort of blasting out, offers, particularly around certain time of year. And that might be bad for the marketing operations team getting a lot of unsubscribes. So it's not ultimately sort of in the best of the business type of layout in the way most businesses are operating today. So ultimately, the way that we've tried to solve for this, or most of us have tried to solve for this, is sort of through this DIY approach, taking a data lake or a data warehouse, or even sometimes a CRM, and basically aggregating all of that data and ultimately, just for lack of a better term, dumping it in one place. And this creates a bit of a nightmare for someone in IT, because it's ultimately hard for them to pull that data out. Forget about compliance. Accessibility is a huge problem. And then, all that data is still disjointed. It's not stitched together in any capacity. It just lives in one place. So that's really the problem that we're seeing today. And it's just really a lack of data integration systems. It's complicated. And ultimately that really results in a deprecation of our data resources. So we're all leaning on perhaps IT or the data analytics team to sort of pull some insights for us. Customer profiles are duplicated across a lot of systems or incomplete. And ultimately, building a marketing strategy is a challenging problem, because that data might be double dipped. It might be just generally bad data. And that really makes it hard for us to be good at our jobs and sort of achieve the metrics that our particular business unit, but then the business as a whole is seeking out to achieve. Chris, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, Brett, this actually reminds me of a client that I had in a previous previous job. We spent 2 days interviewing over 20 business units about how they collect data, analyze, process, and activate off of it. And through that process, we uncovered what seems to have been 20 different data sources, 20 different processes, and 20 different move forward plans that created a core business mess, a sense of fiefdoms across organizations. If my metrics actually were joined instead of siloed, who's right, who's wrong, who's the master record, to the point where the whole house of cards could have come down. But really, to your point, it's taking that step back, seeing what's good for the greater organization. How do you, leverage and meet those challenges?
Perfect. I think then that is a perfect segue. So the first section really was talking about how we got here. And ultimately now we can talk about how we can meet some of those challenges. And this is where we're going to start talking about a customer data platform and what it can do for your business. So really, the power of a CDP can kind of be boiled down into 3 main points. As I mentioned, really you can gain a single view of the customer. So what that means is, perhaps a home address that lives with the direct mail team can be compiled with the, email or multiple emails that might live with the merch team, or purchase history that might live with the commerce team. And all of those things are pulled into a single view of the customer that allows you to really understand the customer history and the standard customer journey, how they engage with your brand, how they want to engage with your brand, and just general themes of like buying history and sort of when they buy, time of year, etc. So that really leads into the second point here around gaining business insights and understanding customer segments. So, with machine learning and analytics, those types of things are exactly what marketers are looking for when they buy a CDP. But I think it's about thinking, what types of analytics are you looking for? Of course, you want an improved ROI on a lot of your campaigns or initiatives, but there are, with Acquia CDP, there's sort of components that are even beyond probably what you imagine, like what type of content do your customers are they more likely to engage in? Or if you are a food service, what route of food delivery is actually going to be the quickest and make the most sense? So a lot of not just marketing ROI based insights, but a lot of sort of deep, rich analytics that are going to help you run your business from a customer experience to an employee experience. And then lastly is being able to actually activate on that data across many channels and across multi-step journeys that are then sort of automated based on this learning about your customer. So really, when we talk a lot about these disjointed systems, we've all been a part of a webinar perhaps, or talk about it on our teams about what is the ideal state for the customer. Of course, they want to have and expect these days to have one sort of consistent brand voice and experience across all of the different components in which they may be talking to a brand. However, I think what's important to talk about with the CDP actually is what the ideal state is for the employees as well. Because of course, the end game is always going to be customer experience, but it's about making your lives a bit easier as well in the process. And so if you think back to that sort of disjointed view and sort of what that DIY data lake layer looked like, the data lake or just DIY system in general sort of locks that data in. And this view is really applying that CDP to all teams, all business units, and all capacities. And the beauty of this is that it really democratizes the data so that it doesn't have to live with your IT team or your data analytics team. And you're able to access not only information about that customer segmentation, but also just generally about your business. You can access some of those analytics that might help you campaign better or might help you segment based on likelihood to buy or likelihood to pay full price or things like that. And so ultimately what that really means is that the ideal state for the employees is that the whole business is working better together because, the website personalization isn't such a challenge to implement. And that might feed into loyalty programs to really drive higher lifetime value. So within our sort of sub business units as a marketing team, we're really playing better together for the end game of customer experience and satisfaction. I had some builds in here. So I'm going to actually take a pause. We talked about the problems with the current data landscape, how a CDP can solve, but I want to hand it over to Chris to really talk about how you select a CDP and what is really the art of the possible when we're talking about customer data platforms.
Excellent. Thank you, Brett, for all that great information and setting us up for what is possible once you've gotten that buy-in organizationally for why a CDP is critical to the business moving forward. Before I move on forward, I think we forgot to get the poll in there earlier. So there we go. This was the poll that we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. If you could please answer, that would be helpful as we move on through this webinar.
Yeah, it'll be great to see where people really are in the buying journey, especially as we're going into this section about how to choose, what factors to consider, and ultimately just get a little better understanding about our audience members with us today.
Excellent. And like I said, when we discuss CDP selection organizationally, IT is looking to buy a platform that not only integrates, does identity resolution, but also, is key to your compliance, whether it's GDPR, CCPA, whatever else coming out in the future, because those data policies are going to continue to come out, and ultimately for liability with do not delete or delete requests and things like that. On the marketing side, they're looking to not only integrate the data, but leverage a platform for better activation capabilities, and really, ultimately, a more informed customer experience. So what is that art of the possible? As a marketer, it feels like you can take a back seat during the implementation phase of a CDP project, because the thought can creep in of what can I really do before there's data ready for me to act on. But we're here to show you today that there's plenty to be done during this phase to ensure that IT and marketing are not only supporting each other in the delivery of a CDP platform, but getting into a successful CDP program for the organization. As your team is planning out and developing processes and goals around what you want to do while the technical lift is occurring, you'll find out that you're going to start to see use cases that naturally start to fall into groups of ideas. As you're documenting these groups of ideas, a best case scenario is that you're going to transform these into your guiding pillars of success as an organization. As you can see up on the screen here, these are some examples of use cases that are rolling up into these pillars and will act as these guiding principles as you move your CDP project into a CDP program, ideally a center of excellence that is driven within and ingrained within your company. And how do we want to succeed? Success is more than a good plan. It takes buy-in, support, and constant nurturing to see through a successful program. Again, you'll see the emphasis on the pillars that we talked about last slide, guiding your capability development across people, process, and technology into success. So we return to where we started. What can a marketing team do once the decision is made to move forward with the program? There's obviously a lot that can be done in parallel so that ultimately when you are launching and driving forward, there's a natural dovetail into launch and immediate ROI and success. And again, once you realize what is possible with a successful CDP program, you really need to be honest with where you are as an organization and map out where you want to be on this journey. Aligning stakeholders, establishing a plan, moving through those necessary steps and into an activation effort creates a program within your organization that requires a measure of reflection, along with a defined path forward to scale and grow as that organization ideally matures. You can kind of see advancing through digital maturity, roadmap, a vision roadmap of business cases that tie into what the North Star of that organization is. Because creating a roadmap isn't just about putting words and drawings on a paper. You need to own it and take a measured approach to enable the platform while growing capabilities with a data-informed roadmap and driving adoption internally early in the program. By doing this, you're reducing the risk of failure in your investment and delivering solutions that will produce outcomes not only from the onset, but again, as you grow and scale with that right platform.
I love this slide.
And again, these connected efforts can be tied directly into outcomes. And what it really all ties back to is how are you supporting the bottom line? How are you increasing business for your organization? By connecting these efforts to outcomes, you can confidentially show your leadership data-driven metrics that correlate to successful program for your organization. This effort should kickstart a transformation process of your organization's culture, ideally into data-driven decision. You're driving back into these values, this digital revenue, everything's about ROI. But I think at this point, Brett, you definitely can talk more about how Acquia can support a company's transformation. So please take it away.
Thanks, Chris. So yeah, so far we've covered, how we got to this problem today of deprecated data resources, how a CDP can solve for that, how you select a CDP, what's possible, who needs to be involved in that buying process, and how you really map out your digital maturity journey. So I want to close out here with really talking about how Acquia CDP can solve for some of these things. Ultimately, we believe that really a CDP has so many different use cases, and that, these are all customer of Acquia with real results that they've achieved, from call center conversions to return on ad spend, or return on ad spend in paid search to website, or just general revenue from holiday campaigns, particularly win-back campaigns for customers that maybe have unsubscribed or, you've lost over a course of time. And so what I love about this slide is really just shares sort of the breadth of different verticals and different types of customers that we have, but also the different types of ways that they're using CDP to power their digital ecosystem and their business insights. And really, there isn't sort of one main ROI for each of these customers. It's just we've selected one in particular, but the likelihood is that they're using anywhere between 3 to 5 to 10 different use cases from a CDP. So when we think about what the art of the possible, as Chris said, there's really so many different types of campaigns that you can select. So when you're thinking about choosing a CDP, it's important to think about where you want to start. Are you looking to do acquisition campaigns and really improve your effectiveness across that board? Are you looking to convert better based on like abandoned cart campaigns or things like that in terms of growth? Is that the goal? Because then maybe we need to think about lifecycle promotion or next order offer, things like that. All the way to loyalty programs. That's really a CDP's bread and butter use case. And then all the way to engagement and sort of reactivation. So again, I think it's about choosing a CDP that's right for you and the digital journey that you've sort of selected and what really you need out of a CDP, but making sure that your CDP can grow with you. It's not something that you're choosing just for your now, but it's something that you're choosing for your now and your digital future. And I just love this slide too, because it helps me visualize really, if you think back to that first slide of all these disjointed data sources, really that's what we're looking at here on the left. There's all of these different systems, and ultimately what a CDP does is it takes the data from all of these independent resources, pulls them into one view, and applies what we call an identity resolution engine, meaning that you can have that really sort of enriched and 360 view of a customer from across all of those systems, and you can spit that information out to better apply website personalization. You can have better call center experiences, better outbound marketing, better digital advertising. We have actually some use cases as well where CDP insights are actually getting surfaced into board decks because it's that strategic. It's tactical and it's strategic. Now, when we think about why Acquia CDP, we like to talk about composable solutions. So here at Acquia, we believe in a best of breed solution, meaning that you shouldn't have to buy an entire suite of one particular company. You should be able to choose the types of tools that are best for you and best for your business. And the reasons why, plenty of customers have chosen Acquia is because of our data democratization. We have ML Studio, which is something that's available to marketers. It's available for business analytics leaders. It's available to IT. That's something that we do very well. We also have a total 360 view of the customer. I previously mentioned, our identity resolution engine, which isn't something a lot of CDPs have. We have definitely proven experience and enterprise scale. We have machine learning for marketers, including, AI to easily segment audiences. And then lastly, we have a unified marketing cloud and DXP, meaning that we're not just a one-off vendor. We're a vendor with a lot to offer and proven experience in the marketplace. So you can trust Acquia and you can trust Acquia CDP. Now, as I mentioned, we are a part of a DXP. So what that means is a digital experience platform. Now, you may be familiar with Acquia from the digital content space, and that's a lot of tools for building and maintaining your website and ultimate content strategy. We also have within our marketing cloud where CDP sits, we have a DAM, we have personalization tools, we have marketing automation tools. And so really the power of Acquia CDP isn't just that it certainly can be a standalone tool, as it's a SaaS-based tool, but it comes from an organization that believes in an open sort of digital transformation journey, meaning that you can select the tools that are right for you along the way and making sure that you're mapping your digital now to your digital future, and that you have a vendor that you can trust and who will support you in that journey along the way. So I think that's where we're going to end it. Chris, I think we did pretty well, but I think there might be some Q&A in the chat. And George, I think maybe you're going to help us moderate some of those questions.
Oh yeah, definitely. I am here and I am going to help. So let's start with, and you guys can flip a coin, rock, paper, scissors on this one. But let's start with, who's typically the owner and maintainer of a CDP marketing ?
Yeah, I think Brett and I will have fairly unique POVs on this, coming from the platform product side and the agency system integrator side. So from my point of view, it shouldn't be a single team owning it. And I know I mentioned it earlier in my talk track. It really needs to become a program because you can go into the depths of shared costs, shared resources, all the stuff that's organizationally, but ultimately this is data. This is data that will inform and power the company, and it needs to be free flowing through the organization. So if one team owns it over another, there's going to, again, creep up these alternate systems and alternate data processes that could influence or could potentially fail what looks to be a successful program. But I'd be interested to see your take on it as well.
Yeah, I think often the number one benefit people associate with a CDP is that you're going to have improved ROI in marketing. So I think often it's seen as a marketing purchase. However, because it has that ability to democratize data across businesses and sort of help, pipeline for IT, it's actually an operational efficiency tool for IT that is often sort of the second key benefit that buyers find. And in some organizations, e-commerce is even a third team. Sometimes that sits within marketing. But ultimately, it's really those three teams, marketing, IT, and e-commerce, that need to partner to buy a tool like this. And ultimately, sort of communicate to their leadership team that this is a tool that they all three will benefit from.
Some of my favorite words: partner together and team up. Man, that's some good stuff right there. So we'll go with this one next. Does a CDP like Acquia hook up and streamline user integrations from SaaS tools like Hotjar, Intercom, Google Analytics, A/B testing tools, etc.? Inquiring minds want to know.
The answer is yes, and there's pretty much no limit on the number of tools that you can sort of hook up and integrate into the CDP. We have customers who use a lot of a ton of different tools, and it's something that is really what's best for their business and what tools they use. We don't really direct exactly what tools are going to be best for a CDP output. It's really whatever their business scenario is, can hook that into a CDP, and the output will still be sort of what we described as better personalization, better campaign management, better segmentation. Chris,
love it.
Yeah, I also think this is really a two-way street, right? You're going to use the ML tools of Acquia, things like that, to create segments. Those segments can align with the A/B tools, the Google Analytics, et cetera, to push and inform, and ultimately go back to that golden record, your primary first-party data to own that customer 360 view. So it's not so much a hookup and output from the CDP as much as it's got to be a two-way street, and Acquia does a great job of that.
Love it. And I know we have more questions, but I will tell you, attendees, now's the time. Like, if you have questions, get them in the Q&A pane. I also know, maybe because it was, for me, it was really quick. Maybe we can see that poll information again too, because I know like some people might be interested, where do I fit in? And so what you can see, what's really cool here is we've got like 83% are in the research phase. 17% of you attendees are in the vendor comparison. So great information that we have here on the poll. But remember, get your questions in. Brett or Chris, any thoughts around some of that like data information that you see? Surprising, not surprising? Like,
I think personally, it makes a lot of sense, not only for the format of this webinar, but ultimately, like, CDPs are becoming a, dare I say, hotter and hotter tech trend that we're all sort of seeing. So I think it makes a lot of sense that a lot of people are still in the research phase, trying to define ultimately the difference between a data lake, a CRM, and a CDP. These are all, of course, super techy acronyms that our business is sort of notorious for, and it's really about what's the difference, how is one better than the other. And what I will say is that I think we're about to see some sort of definition from analysts, from Forrester and Gartner. They've maybe stayed on the sidelines a little bit, trying to let us all figure it out. And we have some good intel from Forrester that they're going to be publishing some of that information soon, and helping buyers really sort out the differences between these data resources. And I think one thing that I would love to add to is, what's the value of what Acquia is bringing to the table? What's the value of what, Gorilla Group and Wunderman Thompson are bringing to the table? At this part of the conversation, or just generally speaking, like I'm representing the vendor, meaning, of course, we offer the product itself. And Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about our partnership and sort of what you guys offer in that sort of deal with a customer?
Sure. Yeah. No. As the agency system integrator, we are helping the customer navigate through what, quite frankly, is an extremely gray area of what a CDP is. I think the last number I saw is that there's 1,000 or so companies that classify themselves as a CDP, which just adds to the convolution, like you mentioned, the data lakes, the CRMs, all these other systems, they contain customer data. So why isn't it a CDP, right? To me, it's, there's some key things. There's the identity resolution, there's the data compliance and security. We're not going to really go into it on this webinar, but there's the whole programmatic ad platform, the death of the third-party cookies, which cookies aren't going away. Newsflash, anybody, they're just going to be more governed. First-party data ownership, that all feeds into the programmatic ad buying social components of what a CDP is and can do. Then, as you mentioned, the marketing outputs, the emails, the loyalties, A/B testing. Really, these things are those outputs that marketing cares more about than IT does. So, getting on the same page with both sides of the organization, working with either some sort of a sales or leadership team as well, and making sure that this isn't a if-else type of conversation. It is more of a conjoined decision that everybody is coming to the table with. That's kind of where we sit, along with obviously the implementation, connections to platforms that are not ran by Acquia, and really making this whole thing become, the CDP ideally becomes the backbone to your digital property.
Good. Brett, this one probably might be good for you. And I love that you mentioned that we love a good acronym, because this question has some acronyms in it. Why should a company or the attendees care about buying a CDP from a DXP?
So I think love a good acronym over here, but I think ultimately when you're evaluating different CDPs in the market, a lot of it to me comes down to vendor credibility, and it's not just product credibility. It's about a proven track record of really prioritizing customer needs. Because when you're selecting a vendor, it's not just selecting a product and implementing it. You're going to be working with that vendor for a period of time, however long you want to be using that product. And it's important to understand that you can have a relationship with the product team if you want to see particular things included in a product roadmap, or that you have faith in their customer service, and that is a well orchestrated and an oiled machine at this point. So when you think about buying a CDP, first, Acquia was the first mover in the DXP space from a CDP perspective. We were the first one in that space to buy a CDP. So we are the most experienced DXP in the market, in the CDP market. And then secondly, it's just about making sure that all of your digital properties have a cohesive strategy. You do not have to buy them all from one vendor, and that's not our point, but it's making sure that that strategy is going to ultimately work for your business and its transformation, and that you have a partner in helping you get there.
Good stuff. Chris, this one might be for you, and it's actually a little bit of a two-part question. And so how should a company begin their CDP journey? And then attached to that, how might a company know if they're ready to take advantage of a CDP, or like they're just not there yet? Kind of unpack that for us.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes could take the hot take hard line of the minute you're collecting customer data, you're already late to the CDP game. But that's just not feasible for every organization. It is a large monetary investment. It does not happen overnight. It's not like running a A/B test where it's like, do we try a green button versus a blue button and see the results? It's a lot of effort. It takes months to really get it organized, running, and moving forward. That's why we spent 30 slides talking about this. It's one of those things that organizationally, as you're depending more and more on data to help your next pivot, that's where the CDP starts to become more and more important. You know, if I'm a startup that makes a couple $1 million a year in AAR, CDP is probably not going to help me. I'm just not there as an organization yet, because you're not going to be able to maximize on those outputs. Those ROIs, your traffic's probably too low. Those ROIs are going to take so long to get to. But if you are doing marketing automation and you're struggling to see if those journeys or those campaigns are having success, if you have a social media team, if you are trying to install a loyalty platform, I think Brett mentioned it earlier, that loyalty is the bread and butter of a CDP. Now you're starting to integrate potentially one platform or many systems, and they all have analytics, they all have data collection, and that data starts to get spread out, and everyone's guessing my answer's right or my answer's right, and trying to take those claims of, well, this campaign worked because it was an email from my email team, or my marketing team ran the social campaign. That's where the CDP starts to cut through the noise, organize, and overlay data across these multiple channels.
Brett, this one I think might be good for you. And it's interesting because, again, going back to words that you've said previously of like teaming up and partnership, this obviously isn't like one person making a decision. So for the attendees who are sitting here and they're wondering, how do I successfully sell this idea to my CMO or CISO? Like, what advice would you give them?
I think we've touched on it a little bit, just that it's not going to be one department that's going to be successful, because if marketing just tries to go to their CMO and say, we're going to buy this and we're going to force this on IT to implement, and we're all going to, benefit in marketing, it's probably not going to be a fun implementation process, and IT is probably not going to want to help you with all the integrations that are required. So really, it's a team sport internally, and making sure you have alignment between marketing, IT, and I'll add e-com there as well, just depending on your business structure. I also want to add that I think in terms of intimidation or sort of selling this in, a lot of times a partner like Chris's group can be super helpful, because they can help you map out what that first year to what that 5-year plan looks like, and what your data strategy as an organization is. So I think a partner can also help with an internal sell, as well as, of course, Acquia, we're used to selling sort of to all members of the buying committee. So we can help you deliver that messaging along the way. You don't have to have it all ready, at the beginning of a conversation with someone. Sometimes it might just start with, hey, I heard about this new type of product. I think we kind of need something like this. Can you come with me to a demo?
I think you brought up a great point. Prior to joining Acquia and Wunderman Thompson, I was working with a analytics consultancy, and we did great work. We created all this documentation, and we had to ultimately turn it over to a development shop to implement what we talked to the client about, and went to a meeting with Acquia about, and presented this whole great dream of why the CDP matters, only to deal with the development teams like, cool, that's not in our sprint. It's not in the budget, or, the multitude of excuses that could inhibit a successful implementation. Then the client is ultimately asking myself and Brett, what's going on? You guys promised the world. And to say, well, the development team didn't do it, is always not the right answer, which goes back to this is a program and not a project. Moving over to the Wunderman side and having the proverbial one throat to choke of the development shop, the creative agency, the UX team, the strategy, the analytics team, all having one program manager, delivery lead on our end, really helps get that dream that was pitched in sales to a closer reality.
It's interesting, Chris. I think that you're dancing around maybe a potential other question that might be good for you. And I think, Brett, you sort of started to pass off a baton when you're like when you partner with somebody like Chris, like that type of thing. Chris, maybe just talk us through a little bit of professional service versus outside agency versus system integrator, like what's best, how do you know what to choose, that type of thing.
Sure. Dancing around. I mean, I didn't want to turn this into a sales pitch, but now that you put me on the spot, I guess I have to, right? Acquia, great partner. Their responsibility ultimately is to the Acquia platform. We had a question earlier that mentioned Google Analytics or Hotjar or things like that. Now you, as a client, are orchestrating 1, 2, 3, 5, 12 vendors, getting them to all try to talk to each other. If there's not a built-in native connector, some custom development has to go on. Who knows who that responsibility falls upon? That's where the agency system integrator relationship with these partners really helps shine and make this a unified process. We kind of, like a duck swimming in the water, you see the calm above the water, but below there's flailing and everything else is happening. The customer doesn't need to see or know about that. They just want those outputs at the end of the day. And working with Acquia, working with their group of partners as well, we help to smooth that out and get that out there for the customer. Then ultimately the strategy and how to bring in the marketing team and the email team and the ad team and all these other teams that don't necessarily know or want to deal with the CDP, but want to have the outputs and saves.
Gotcha. It's interesting, as I was watching the presentation and actually like screenshotting some stuff and like unpacking for myself and what we do, it feels like a very kind of weighted decision, if I might say that. And so, Brett, how can you make sure that you're selecting the right CDP? This doesn't feel like something that you just like, we'll try this one and then we'll try. Like, how do you know? Like, yep, that's the one. What should we be thinking about?
It is. I mean, candidly, this is a type of product that has a longer deal cycle than most because there's so many things to consider. And when you implement it, it's an implementation and a product that will last you a minimum of 5 years if you're happy with it much longer. And so I think when you're sort of evaluating against different vendors, really you want to be, like we talked about, sort of the choosing a vendor that you believe in terms of will be a good partner, will have great customer service, response time, and just general helping you build towards your digital transformation journey. So those are some important vendor specific aspects. But when you think about CDP specific aspects, really you want to be making sure that you're leveraging maybe even some of the slides from today, but thinking about your use cases and mapping the first 3 that you want to get out of the gate after implementation in that first quarter. What are the 3 that you need to sort of prove ROI on, and how can you evaluate and measure success for your managers? And I think that making sure that you have selected a CDP that will be able to do that now, and then thinking even just in 3 years, where would you hope to be? Like, where would you hope that this investment could take you? And making sure that the CDP can also map to those instances. I think something that's a little bit more I think is a huge benefit of an Acquia CDP basically is thinking about that data democratization, like how many members of your team are actually going to have access to the analytics in the tool. I think those are really good questions to ask of all vendors, because ultimately you don't want an amazing tool that 2 people can figure out how to use. It has to be user friendly. It has to be available for IT, marketers, and data scientists. And ultimately, that's something that our platform is built for. It's designed for that. And the analytics tools are really not just focused on marketing campaign ROI. They're focused on business insights. So I think those are sort of the 3 things that I would think about is vendor, journey, like what you need now and what you need moving forward, and then who needs to be using the tool and what's the access points for them.
Nice, nice. We got time for like one more question. Chris, this might be you. Brett, you might have stuff you want to throw in on this one too. And this gets a little nerdy, but hey, the audience asks, so we have to give the answer, right? Who's in a position today to handle this shift that's going to happen to this first party data activation?
You know, that is the question of, in my world, that's been the question of the year. And Google kind of helped by punting that for another year. Apple kind of pushed back and moved it up even further. First party data, third party data, walled gardens of Facebook, look-like modeling. There's so much out there, but at the end of the day, if you can control your data, that data ownership has to become the lifeblood. I think somebody talked about data is not fuel, it's actually water. Water is reusable, water is recyclable, water is constantly moving. That's how you have to treat data. And if you don't own the data, you're always going to be waiting for it to be cleansed or arriving. If you want to start doing in session personalization, if you don't own the data, you're never going to do it, because best case scenario, you get that data in 2 hours. And I don't know how anybody else here uses the internet, but if I have to wait 2 hours to get a recommendation, I would have left 1 hour, 59 minutes and 40 seconds ago, right? Or 50 seconds ago. That first party data that people talk about, that's where the CDP, the DMP, the data lake, the data warehouse, keep throwing out acronyms. That's where those things start to matter even more. Brett, what is about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about third-party data in a cookieless future, that basically just cements the need for a CDP, because what a CDP recognizes is accessibility to the data. So if you get a request to remove a personal address or an entire customer record, if it's sitting in a data lake, it's going to take some time. And you might not be within GDPR compliance to remove that record. And it's not because you're not trying. It's simply just because the systems are too sort of clogged, I guess. And so when you think about a cookieless future and third-party data, you have to think about data accessibility and data protection. So you have to have the cleanest possible data that you can, and you have to have accessibility to it. And that's really why a CDP is coming to the rise. That's why CDP is having a rocket ship of a year, is because the death of the cookie is where we're headed as a business, as a digital culture, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, there's no accident that every major platform in the last 18 months has built or bought a CDP. It's already here. It was coming 5 years ago. It arrived 2 years ago. It will be commonplace 2 to 3 years from now. It's like tag managers before that and analytics platforms before that. This need for data, this need to act and operate on it, will continue to evolve as internet and user behaviors continue to evolve.
Yeah, totally agree. I'll tell you, as a marketer, it makes me sad. I love me some good cookies. But anyway, thanks, Brett. Thanks, Chris, for this amazing presentation. Thanks again to Acquia for sponsoring today's event. As a quick FYI, attendees, when you exit Zoom, there will be a quick 30-second survey. Please take that survey. Let us know. We would love to know what you thought of today's session. And of course, thanks for joining us, Brett, Chris, attendees. We will see all of you real soon in the next Marketing Profs event.